Hi guys. Yeah, I know the lighting's kind of weird, but I need light to see. Uh, I really need to do something about my lighting. I get it, but it's kind of the spooky ambiance. So we're gonna do part two of all the Stark in Indiana grave schools and body snatchers. So this is gonna be fun.
This demonic church was actually home to Jim Jones, and we may have found the portal to hell in the basement. This was the first ever church that Jim Jones ever went to start his practices. And in quote, Jim Jones said that this is the first place that ever made him happy. From years leading into the Jim Jones casualty of over almost 1,000 people, who know what Jim Jones may have been doing inside of this church. People who did go to this church actually reported Jim Jones locking them in the attic and forcing them to listen to what he had to say. We don't know exactly how every spirit got here, but we do know that there is a dark, malevolent spirit who does reside in this church. Last time we were here, we got a lot of responses leading to a closet and a shelf, and later we found out that there's a demonic, possessed doll that actually resides in one of the closets that was attacking a little child. And last time we were here, we caught a door opening by itself. Was this spirit trying to trap one of the investigators? We don't know. This demonic Jim Jones church is a horror movie in itself, and we will be live here on TikTok tonight. Joined along with Bynum Investigations, and this is how...
Okay, so we're going to go into a bit more information concerning Mr. Jim Jones. Mr. Jones was a pastor in Indiana. He's pretty infamous. But a few things that weren't known about Mr. Jones is that he was one of the first pastors in the state, or the first person in the state. He and his wife, Marcelle, I believe her name was, to adopt children of color, because I guess back in that day you were not allowed to do that. But they had issues conceiving, and they were only allowed, they only gave birth to one biological child, and the rest they had adopted. They were affectionately known as the Rainbow Family. They did adopt children from Korea. They adopted 2 originally. Now, I don't believe that those 2 children were related. Apparently, there was a sister, and don't know. But anyway, the sister Stephanie was tragically unalived at a car accident. Coming back home from the zoo. Other people had also tragically died in this accident. And apparently, because this child was adopted from Korea, she was not allowed to be buried in the cemetery because it was a white cemetery. And she had to be buried in a cemetery for people of color. They supposedly, before the accident or during the accident, Marcelle was bedridden due to her pregnancy. She had a vision of a child saying something of the unalived child coming to her and saying something about go and get my sister. Now, whether they knew they were sisters, not sure. But yeah. Just another little interesting fact about Mr. Jim Jones, and allegedly his original church in Lynn, Indiana is haunted. The next Suzanne, though, also said that there were some inappropriate things that went on, and also apparently some of the children that were unalived in Jonestown, the foster care system in Indiana has some missing kids, and they believe that some of those kids were taken to Jonestown, where quite a few people passed away, and we've done videos on it. There is a thing from California on that, and of course we have Ryan White, who died in the early 90s. One of the first documented cases of someone that died due to, or unalived, due to complications of AIDS. He was a hemophiliac, which is how he contracted HIV. He was kicked out of his school and all that lovely stuff, and not allowed to go to school. The family was ostracized. He wasn't allowed to go to school. They faced a lot of prejudice in that lovely town of Kokomo, which they moved, and Ryan passed away, and his grave has been desecrated numerous times. Freedom Land Cemetery is near Crown Point, Indiana, and it is one of the oldest African American cemeteries in the state. It was started anywhere between like 1830s, anywhere between 1800s and 1830s. A lot of the graves are unmarked. Some of them, one lady passed away a few months before people of color were free. They faced all types of abuses. They had to pay tolls to come to the cemetery to bury their loved ones, and they also had to pay tolls to go and visit their loved ones, to take flowers on their graves, and it was actually finally issued as a landmark, and they're doing all that they can to clean up the area. I think I have a video. I hope I do. But the one I'm going to show, I don't know if it's going to get copyrighted. I hope it doesn't. But yeah, that's all about Freedom Land Cemetery. And next we're going to move on to, and I'm using this word with reverence and respect because some people do consider this term to be unpleasant. Some of the Roma or Romani people do not appreciate the term gypsy, but Gypsy Hill Cemetery, I believe it was Butler County. The story goes is that before the white settlers came, they would stop at a particular place and camp around the time, we're not even going to go into the Potawatomi right now. And people would go to the camp and get their fortunes told and do all of that stuff, you know, and and they would come into town, and of course, people being racist as they were, and there's more situations with the Romani people here in the state. It was determined that there was some type of illness going around, and not only were the people, when they wanted medical treatment, they were denied medical treatment. So some people passed away due to their illness, and so the Romani people had to bury their loved ones in unmarked graves, and because there were people that should not have been moved, that were too sick to be moved, that died as they were basically ran out of town. So because of the close proximity to the current cemetery, it's called the Gypsy Hill Cemetery. There was some rumors that a farmer's daughter had been assaulted, that a young boy had died close to the camps. There wasn't details as to how the child passed away, but they were blamed for that. Also, and there's something about a little girl who guards the cemetery that has a white dress. I'm not all too sure. So, but anyway, I thought I had my papers organized. I always do this, guys. I'm so sorry. Okay. And my all-time personal favorite is Greenbush Cemetery. Now, Lafayette did not start keeping records. The city was established in 1855, so this apparently happened before they started keeping records, the 30s and 40s, but there was an old French and Guiana cemetery, and so what they decided to do was dig up bodies, probably didn't get all the bodies, and move them to what they considered to be the outskirts of town, which was no longer the case, to the original, and make this the Pioneer Cemetery, and it's no longer on the outskirts of town. And on top of that, they have veterans buried there and Civil War veterans, and there are 13 Civil War soldiers that were buried there. They died on Halloween, another train wreck, and they could not be identified. So so the soldiers, in fact, were placed there. But the cemetery was dug up because they wanted room for a church, and they disturbed those remains. So, wasn't far from where a family member lived, and I was on Wine and Witchcraft. I was hooked into their internet, and I was on Wine and Witchcraft of all times, and that particular church caught fire. Karma. And going to do more videos and later, I don't know how, because I want to get the cemetery series done, but Crown Hill Cemetery, when it came to the memorial for Edgar Allan Poe, they actually dug up graves, so they could basically set up Edgar Allan Poe's memorial. There's a bit more graphic stuff that's coming up, and I'm going to get that done, and then I'm going to kind of try to leave that whole thing on a lighthearted note, because there's a lot of history. So, anyway, I have some videos with pictures and some other things. So, peace, love, and light, guys. Please like, comment, and subscribe.
This is an Indian mound. It's an Indian burial ground. What's strange about this one to me is it's got these white settlers' graves on it, sprawled all around the place. From a family back in the 1850s and other settlers. There's some sunken graves that the headstones has been lost. You can pause and read this, the history of it. But I know some people has seen the Indian burial grounds, the Indian mounds, but to me it's the first time that I've ever seen one with settlers on top of the burial ground. Yeah, this is like an ancient Indian mound. Just thought it was a little different. Have you seen one?